Hey Patreon, I hope you guys are all doing well and taking care of yourself. I am so excited to share this exclusive bit of content with you. It was so much fun getting to talk to Paige and Sarah about Bridgerton, and I think just whenever creators can get together and like have fun and talk, it's great. Again, there's going to be a general trigger warning because we are going to be discussing the lack of consent rape scene in Bridgerton. But other than that, it's a fun time, so enjoy.
Yay! All right. So, first question. What did you think of the show overall as just a show? And we're going to start with Paige.
Oh, overall, I really loved it. And I use love kind of fluidly in that, like, clearly we got some things to talk about, but um, it's kind of right up my alley in being overly dramatic and a romance novel in any case. Yeah. So overall thoughts, really big fan.
Mhm. Sarah, I see your frown,
So,
so I know you're ready to just be like,
no, I'm not. I mean, so like it's very engaging, right? And I'm not going to pretend that like I didn't enjoy watching it for a while there. Because it's like that Marie Kondo gif where she's like I love mess. It's like that's something that I really enjoy about it is that it gives me a lot to think about and it's very entertaining and like in fiction that's just something I enjoy is like there's a lot going on. And I mean I like the period generally of Regency England to an extent. So like I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that like it's so it's so clearly like adapted from a historical romance novel, which is we just don't get that a whole lot. We usually have adaptations of like historical dramas that have romances in them, which is a different genre. Um, but like obviously some stuff towards the end where I'm like, oh, there's some choices here. But I did like it, and I actually really liked that like it's a show that has sex in it and it's actually part of the narrative rather than like the typical way that I see like sex used in Shonda Rhimes shows. Which like to be fair, like she's an executive producer, she's not the showrunner. But like it's published under her like Shondaland Netflix deal, so of course people bring their expectations to that. But it's not her like on every single episode or anything. But like the hallmarks are there of some of
mhm.
her work, and so uh, I like it, but there are also things that I'm like, I don't know. It's not like my favorite show ever. It was something that I enjoyed watching,
Yeah.
and for some things more than others. Like
Yeah.
I thought the staging of the sex scenes was actually quite engaging. I like that, but that's because like I'm super into that kind of thing. So
No, I agree. I think overall, if I was going to say how I felt about it personally, is like I liked it and I found it really engaging. And I've watched it so many times with other people since. And it's been interesting seeing how, like, almost universal it is in terms of how it appeals to people who are maybe not primarily into romance. Like my girlfriend is watching it and she's not really into that kind of stuff, but she's like, it's very well made and very well put together. And like my friend from college is liking it. Like my friend's parents like it. So a lot of people seem to be really engaging with the material. I don't really know if like the problematic things that we notice and critique are things that the average viewer are necessarily going to click with because it's not framed to be problematic. It's framed as more just like tension. And don't worry about the dogs. I think people appreciate having some ambiance.
I am home alone with them, so they have no choice other
Than to
than,
bother you.
yeah, pretty much.
It's okay. We love dogs here. Just like Chris Evans. So yeah, I think it's a very watchable show. I think it's good. I think that it just has a lot of the hallmarks of like a 2000s romance novel. And
Mhm.
in trying to, having read the book and trying to correct some of the issues, I think they actually made it worse, except for
Yeah,
diversity. And I
like
think that'll be interesting to talk about when we get to sort of like the book versus show differences. So let's start with Daphne, because I think that, a heroine really defines like these period dramas, and I feel like the show really wanted us to be like, she's beautiful, she's witty, she's this. But to me, she kind of felt like Jane Bennett given Elizabeth Bennet screen time.
I kind of agree with that. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And coming away from the show, I definitely thought way less about Daphne in the grand scheme of everything than like other characters that aren't the main characters, pretty much. Um, but I would agree, she is very Jane Bennett, but like if it was about Lizzie Bennett, and that
Right.
I'm
She's
gonna
just
disagree a little
okay.
bit about the Jane Bennett assessment. Really, just because like I think Jane Bennett's like defining quality is that she is like the nicest person on the planet, and like has to be given irrefutable evidence that anybody is doing any kind of deception or doing anything
I don't mean in
bad.
terms of personality per se, but I mean in terms of like being framed as like the most beautiful, like
Oh,
the one
gotcha.
who
yeah,
the attainable, elegant, and like she has the more, you know, the quippy feminist sister who's like, like I feel like they took all the worst parts of Lizzie Bennett's character and were like, just give it all to Eloise, just stuff it all into her mouth. Her and Mary Bennett, just like stuff it right in there.
Yeah.
And I feel
They're
like
like huge Mary Bennett vibes from Eloise. Like every time she opens her mouth, I'm like, this is like Mary Bennett as a feminist killjoy rather than as somebody who purports to be a great philosopher, even though she's like, I don't know, 14.
yeah, and
Like,
specifically Lizzie Bennett from the 90s BBC series. Like it was big that energy to me. And I feel like Daphne herself is just not given like what did you think about the chemistry between her and Simon? Because I think that they had good chemistry, but in the sense that they were just both two hot people who couldn't help but not be hot together.
I think they had good chemistry. I
yeah.
I mean like, and I don't think it's just because they're both hot. Like, but I think it's probably because they're both good actors. Like, I was certainly drawn into it. Like, but I don't know. Maybe it is because they're both really hot.
No,
I
kind of
yeah.
agree with Sarah in that like I think they did have good chemistry, not just because they're both attractive people. But that's kind of all that I can say about Daphne is that she has good chemistry with Simon.
Yeah, Daphne's a little like, so I mean, I know I've seen a lot of people talk about the fact that like this show frames her as like, oh, she's the season's incomparable and she's so perfect and beautiful, and a lot of people are like, why? And like, I don't disagree with that. Having read the book now, I'm like, she's a little bit more interesting in the book. I like the angle of her getting this like kind of sexual awakening aspect of the story, but I think it's unfortunately the most interesting thing about her character. And it's nothing against the actress. I think she's doing like pretty much everything that she can. She's incredibly
Yeah.
charming. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think her like charm is one of the reasons like the show is so watchable, as you remarked. But like her as a character, she's fine. She's, you know, not, I wouldn't go so far as to call her like a blank slate for, you know, the viewer to like project themselves onto. She does have a little bit more personality than that, but like not a
Yeah.
whole lot.
She feels like sort of like an archetypal 90s era Disney princess of like beautiful, like, but really defined by being spunky in a certain like box of like, you know, she has all of these sort of like no, aspirations that are very like normalized, like, you know, she wants to be in love, wants to get married, whatever. But the show constantly is like, I can make my own decisions. I have autonomy a little bit, damn you. And I'm like, but do you, Daphne? Do you?
And
But
don't throw it. I feel like every other sentence, like, or at least every single episode, there is a time where Daphne's like, I can make my own decisions and like, I lead my own life. And I'm like, so what is that? Like, do it.
what is it?
Yeah.
What does that show me? And I
And
think
that was
that's
in the
what's so
book
frustrating.
too.
Yeah,
That was in the book a lot.
but I
Like,
think, but I think the book, and I think also like I think it's important to recognize that like the show is being heralded by a male showrunner, and like not that there isn't like, you know, from the writing room seems diverse and everything like that, but I do think that a lot of those choices feel very like Sex in the City-ish of like you have to really have a hyper glamorized lead heroine to really buoy the series, because then everyone has to rotate around them. But I feel like how it always works, that everyone rotating around them ends up being more interesting. And then you get frustrated because it's like, I want to be more interested in Simon and Daphne, but I think the biggest thing was that kind of like their courtship is just so much, and then the second half is all of this drama that that takes away from all of the good that you just had. And I think that the way the show handles the drama doesn't really allow you as a viewer to feel like all of those connections and vibes in the beginning equal up to a marriage that is functional. And I think that's kind of why sometimes these things don't end. These things end before they get married, and they save that for the spinoff, so that like you see them married in like the background. Because I think that's really where this series begins to have its drag.
Yeah, and I certainly, this is a personal preference, but I personally just enjoy romance novels a little bit more when the female leads have more of an arc and have a bit more like I just find that way more engaging. Like, you know, A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole is really intriguing because like the main character has to deal with a lot of the abandonment issues that she has. And like that's not to say that you always need an arc for your male or female lead if you're reading a cishet pairing. But like I think maybe we could have benefited from something like that, because otherwise then you are entirely relying on the drama that's created by very unfortunate things that they decided to keep from the book.
Yeah. Well, before we get into sort of like the more controversial bits, I just want to ask, what was like your favorite overall moment or scene in the series? Because I think that it's really beautifully shot, and I did enjoy a bunch of different moments. I will say that I loved every time the mom was like, Antony, stop being a fucking idiot. Like, this is my house. Like, please stop. But my favorite scene was probably actually when the rain happens during their ball. I thought that was just beautifully shot. I thought like it was a really good catharsis scene. Okay. And it reminded me of Pride and Prejudice, the other one, the one that Paige likes, 09. Of just like of how the rain is there to be like, all of our attention is just washing away. I just thought that moment, despite everything else going around, was really beautifully shot and put together. And I was like, you know what? I think that at its core, at the core of it, is like what makes the series like it can have these moments of like beauty. It can have these moments of real like emotional catharsis between two people that we know care about each other, but sometimes it can be so superficial that we don't really get to consume like what at the heart do they love of each other, even though I think they try to make it work. And I also like Simon's monologue at the Queen talking about why he wants to marry Daphne. That got
very
me,
sweet.
not gonna lie.
Yeah,
it's very sweet.
What about you, Paige?
The one scene that really stands out to me is the one where Violet goes in and confronts Anthony about being like not a good head of the household, even though it's supposed to be his responsibility since he's the oldest son, and basically just tells him like, if you're not going to be good at your job, I'll do it for you. I'm much better at it. I just really enjoyed her performance, especially in that scene. It was great.
She was great. Yeah.
Let's see. I enjoyed pretty much any scene that Penn is in. Like, yes. Penelope. She radiant, such a wonderful character. Right up until the very end, which like we don't have to talk about that specifics. We don't have to talk about like the spoilers of the final episode necessarily, but like that was a choice they made.
I'll be like, this is a spoiler video. Like, we talk about everything.
Yeah. But like, she's that fantastic. She's I liked Marina when she has the screen time to say things of like, I'm not ashamed that these people are poor, like they make an honest living. Like when she said stuff like that, I'm like, yay. When she's dealing with like when she's just constantly being beaten into the ground, not a fan of that. But like I think my favorite scene is probably like it's probably the scene on their wedding night in the inn. It like the extended sex scene, really, because like it's such a moment of like character development between them that it's also just really hot, because I do think they have good chemistry. And like the fact that they did this extended long sequence instead of like this quick and fast like 30-second thing where we don't see anything, and like there is, I mean, we don't see very much, but like the fact that they took the time to kind of show it as this incredibly intimate moment between them, I thought was very romantic and very well staged, and like makes me wonder if they had intimacy consultants on set or something like that, which is great. I hope they did. And I mean, their honeymoon stuff afterwards was also very hot. So
yeah, no, it was. I mean, like they were getting it, and I think everyone I have talked to about the series is like, he's hot. His boxing friend is hot.
oh,
You know, we were
so
eating.
hot.
He was so hot. I was like, I want to see more of you, sir. Like, please
Same.
come back. Ah, so
Yeah.
fun. But we got to get to the meat part of it. So
The
the
problematic
sexual
meat.
assault. Yeah, the problematic
Yeah,
meat and
right.
potatoes. So the sexual assault. So because you have only seen the show, Paige, I want to get your opinion first, because I think that in comparing and contrasting the book to the show makes that scene still problematic, still an
Right.
issue, but more interesting. But I want to get your thoughts on what you knew. Did you know about the scene happening before you watched it? And if not, and so what do you think after you saw it?
I did not know about it beforehand. And it's hard for me to remember exactly what I thought. Like I knew that it was obviously not something I should be rooting for, but I didn't feel so vehemently against it. It was like afterwards when we were all having conversations about it that I was like, "Oh yeah, this is totally wrong." I don't really know why I didn't have that initial reaction, but like now we're all on the same page as far as that goes. Um and Sarah and I have talked about it like afterwards as well, and I basically said at one point like I might be able to give her a little bit of a break if the show had really amped up this idea that like really honed in on the idea that she knows nothing and that he's teaching her everything basically, but they don't really care about that in that scene. It's just about the shock and the like almost revenge that she takes out on him. That's what that whole scene is built on. And so like they don't get credit for that as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it's
And I'm not surprised that you felt that way, because I don't think that the show sees it as a violation, and therefore they don't
right.
expect the audience to see it as a violation, because they're just talking like, well, you betrayed me, you lied to me,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so it's just that, and so it creates this whole other tension. So okay, so the book, I'm gonna set the stage for it. So like in the book,
Mhm.
she's again still not taught about sex, but she figures out from seeing him ejaculate onto the bed that he can't have children. And then she starts sleeping in different beds. And what Simon in the book does is that he's very much more like, you're my wife, I own you, you will sleep in my bed with me, you will not sleep somewhere else.
Very 2000s male lead. He is blustering, and there's a lot of roaring, and there's a lot of like, you belong to me, and like very possessive kind of stuff. Like they definitely upgraded him for like 2020
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
show.
and there's no way they would have had a black man saying all that stuff to a white woman. Like that just would
Right.
not have been able to
That's a
work
really
in the
good
same
point.
way. Yeah, it would have
Not under
totally been
Shonda.
different. Yeah, not Shonda was like, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of colorism in this show, but we cannot have that.
Right.
And then so they're sleeping in different beds. Simon goes out and gets drunk, and he like comes back to her room and is like, I love you, and like he's like drunk but still like kind of awake, and like she's kissing him, and she knows that he is getting aroused.
Well, he falls asleep.
He falls asleep.
Ooh.
He gets like aroused, and she literally has this thought in her head like, I can get what I want from him. And I'm like, girl, no, he's asleep. What are you doing? Like,
but then what they do, but the thing about it too, what they do
wakes up.
is that they have him kind of like in between, like half awake, half asleep.
He's like awake and consenting, but he's still drunk, and like it's.
And he's like grabbing.
But then she does what she does in the show, and she gets on top of him and makes it so that he can't like pull out in time, but like she puts more intentional effort into not letting him do that, as opposed to in the show where it almost like they almost frame it like she's doing this deliberately and it's calculating and cold, but like there's this feeling that like maybe he could, he just ran out of time, but they like emphasize in the book that she's like bearing down on him, and I'm like, oh, this is a choice. And then like when after it happens, he's like very upset and very violated. He has a full-blown like
panic attack almost.
Yes.
Very PTSD-ish. Like
Yes.
he's getting, because his in the book his stutter remains, and when he gets anxious or anything like that, it comes out. And I think what was interesting about the book version of it is that I understood why Daphne made that choice more, even though I disagree with it. I think it was a bad choice. But I understood why she did it more in the book, and I think they made it make more sense, quote unquote, in the book than in the show. Because in the show, they really have Simon and Daphne being a unit of having companionship, and like also of making the duplicity of both of their actions more something that both characters internalize about. Like both of them sort of have to linger with like, did I do the right thing? Was this right? Like even Daphne's not walking around like, I was right. In the book, she's like, oh, like he's not here anymore. I don't know what to do. There's just more introverted conflict about it. The show completely wants to make it a girl boss moment. And I don't know why they made that choice, except that they did not want there to be any gray area, but they wanted to keep that conflict. I still don't know why. They said that it's the only conflict in the book.
It's horrible because like there were actually moments leading up to it, like when they have the fight, like before, like the night before the assault takes place in the book, where like he like barges into her room after she's moved into a different room, and he's yelling at her, and he like advances towards her and starts to come onto her and like reminds her that like they've slept together tons of times at this point, and like he knows what she likes, and I'm like, oh, this is not going well. And eventually he does leave. How gentlemanly of him. But like
terrible.
It's wild because they like make this statement that, oh, he'd never do that, he would never force her to do that, and then, you know, in the next scene she does that to him. But like, oh no, I can't remember where I was going with this.
I just think like even as I was watching it, I just thought if they just talk to each other, like the show has built up that they have this camaraderie, but even before they get married, like if they just talk to each other, maybe they could have alleviated the problem before it was ever caused.
Right.
If he, like, I know that it's a lot of trauma for him to work through, and I'm not gonna hold that against him or anything. But I think, like, maybe if she had asked the right questions about, like, well, why are you doing this? And, like, I'm now involved, so maybe I could use a little bit of explanation as far as what is going on here. Like, something different could have come out of that, I think.
And they blend it so weirdly because I just don't, like, as you said, they're so good at talking to each other. Like, they're like, oh, we're best friends. Like, so you're best friends. And when you think that, and you find out about that your partner won't ejaculate inside of you this way, your resolve is to trick him,
right,
and maliciously get revenge sex on him, which doesn't make sense with TV Simon. With book Simon, I could see her doing that because I feel like even in the book she gets more caught up in like, oh, I have a chance. Like in the show, it's very much like, oh, I'm gonna get the sperm today, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for her to make those choices. And also, by making Simon not at all be an angry Black man, they remove any way for him to express that violation,
right?
Because they completely ignore that. It's like completely whitewashed. So it doubles the issue of what she did in the show to me.
Yeah.
And it's hard because like I don't like to use the term like gray when it comes to these kind of things that often, because usually there is no gray. But I feel like the gray that existed within the book was completely erased in the show for like white feminist convenience of like really wanting to make it this girl boss power moment. And I
Right.
really think that was a mistake, because especially with the race casting that they did, it would have been actually a good conversation to maybe have of how like white women can definitely inflict sexual violence upon a black man, it's even if they have consented before, because that's something that people don't talk about as much. And that
And
was a
even
big
if they're
opportunity that
married,
was
like
missed.
they are
Yeah,
married and it
yeah,
still happens.
Yeah.
yeah. And I just wish that like the show, what they wanted to modernize it so much, but couldn't commit the whole way through because they're trying to stick to the books in weird ways, but then also do all like the whole Marina thing is totally made up for the
Yes.
book, which just serves to make Penn look like an asshole. And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, why can't the cute fat girl just be out here swerving? Why she got to be upset about this whole thing? Who cares about Colin? Who cares if it's Isis Greed? I don't know him. And then all of a sudden they reveal that she's Lady Whistledown, which is in the books, but doesn't happen for like 4 more books. Because
Yeah.
I
it's
don't think
weird
that
that
should
she
have
would.
happened it shouldn't have happened in the first season, like that
No.
reveal.
And what's funny is that they don't reveal it in the book, but we get little excerpts, like very short excerpts of Lady Whistledown papers, like at the beginning of each chapter. And what's interesting is that, like, knowing that it's Penn, you start to notice that every time that she writes about something, it's usually revolving around the Featherington sisters. Like, it's usually framed through the context of an interaction that they had. Or like, I saw like Penelope Featherington doing this, or I saw whatever the other ones, Prudence, I don't remember.
Prudence, Philippa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Philippa, that's it. I saw
Yeah.
Philippa Featherington doing this, and I'm like, so I mean, when you know that, it makes sense. But like, there's nothing. She gets like no book time, like in the actual book. She's not fleshed out. I imagine because she's introduced as Colin's love interest in another book.
Yeah.
But like it, this time they did Marina wrong.
Marina
Like,
stuff really fucked me up, and we can all talk about this because I'm like, so you make like the character exists but in a completely different context, but I'm not up to that part in the book. So like you invent this character, and I think it's gonna be this cute black girl about to go on Society, snatch hoes, and then she just suffering every episode because she's pregnant with some random white man baby. What is this?
every episode, I'm like, oh,
Never has a baby
excellent. Marina catches a break. And then no, they're like, nope, we're pounding her into the floor again. Something else this week. And I'm like, no, why? Why? Like, didn't you love the part where she like, they have this scene where like she makes the abortion tea, and like it's meant to be like, why wouldn't we believe her, because she seems to be very like knowledgeable and in touch with the real world and quite grounded outside in comparison to the gentry. And then like the white doctor shows up and is like, did you really think that a tea was gonna work? And I'm like, bitch, it has. Like,
it do be working.
Like, that is a thing that women have been doing for like hundreds of years. Like, and maybe she didn't know exactly how to do it, but like, shut up. Like,
and she's having the longest pregnancy, the longest first trimester of her life, because she's been there forever. She's not bleeding. She don't get not one curve. And I'm just like, are you sure you're pregnant? Because I don't see anything cooking in that oven, girl. It was too much.
Yeah.
Also, like, she's clearly such a talented actress because she does so much with the material. Like, and I just felt like, oh man, honey, I'm so sorry that they wasted you on this like torture porn. Like, I mean, this sort of thing is the thing that like starts to bother me on Shonda Rhimes shows as like they go on. I just find that like the initial shock and drama, like I'm very into when I'm first watching it, and then as I go on, I'm like, oh, this is just, we are just building on each one. Like, I feel like Marina's whole thing was like a whole season of like scandal. And then like we go and like where the stakes are just so high and so dramatic, and there is a point where you can no longer build on that kind of tension, and to me it becomes tiring, which is why I'm like, know. Maybe if they get another season, this could be a really good formula for this, like, because they'll have to focus on other characters. But then again, Anthony's not. I mean, they focus on Anthony to a great deal, and I hate it.
Well, as we know, the show did get renewed for a second season today, as the day that we're recording this on the 21st of January. And it's gonna be renewed for a second season, and it's gonna be Anthony focused because it's supposed to be him and the new girl.
I don't know how much of it I'll be able to stand. There needs to be a balance of Anthony and literally anybody else.
Well, it's gonna be
I might be able to deal with it.
Well, there's going to be some new characters. It's going to introduce a new girl and a new family. I hope that it's a woman of color, and I hope that she's dark skinned, because like literally I felt like for all of the like way that they're trying to have more like diversity on the screen, it was the same shade of diversity except for Lady Danbury, who was I think the brownest woman present besides the queen. Lady Danbury is the best character transference, her and the queen.
I just love Adjoa Ando. Like, she is so fantastic at this show. Like, so talented.
The gowns, they're so good. I really loved her. So, since we are getting a season 2, what is something that you hope that they change going forward? We'll start with you, Sarah. Well, he can't die, girl. They all get married, so you need to get with it.
Anthony was annoying in the book, but he played that very, like, I don't know why straight women find this so attractive, like the insane, the ridiculously possessive and protective older brother. I'm like, don't you find like the constant cock blocking annoying? I don't want to read that. Like, but
well, you're an older sister, so you don't understand how fun it is to cock block a younger sibling.
Far from it. I actively encourage my brother to talk to people. But like,
Sarah
but like,
doesn't see the need to cock block anybody.
No, I don't. It also just, it frustrates me as a trope, because I'm like, when men are like, no, I don't want you to sleep with my sister. I'm like, so, and it's because of the way, like, presumably, because that person has seen their friend treat other women badly, and I'm like, maybe you shouldn't be friends with them at all. Like, if they're a jerk. Like, if you're worried about leaving them alone with your sister, maybe you shouldn't be friends with them. Like, I hate that trope, and like, it shows up frequently. And but the redeeming quality about Anthony in the book is that there's no Sienna. He's not like hurting like this poor woman, and I'm not saying that to mean like she's this weakling or whatever, but like, every time he comes back into her life, I'm like, girl, no, avoid him. It's okay. I know y'all have chemistry, but it's not worth it. Yeah. Like,
don't
you
are
better
pussy
than
on
this.
his sideburns. Don't do it. He don't deserve it.
Ugh. Like at the end where she's like, you know, I really thought about going with you, but like, you need to let me go. Like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, yes, I'm so proud of you. Like, I don't know how much I'm gonna be intrigued by him finding love next season. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna need some serious punishment for him, like some suffering. Like, can we transfer the Marina suffering to like Anthony?
I will read the book and see how much suffering he gets, because I feel like from what people have said about Kate, apparently, because that's apparently his love interest, she a bad bitch, and she's gonna really torture him a little bit. So
good, he needs it. I'm glad.
What about you, Paige? What are you looking forward for season 2?
I want so much more Penelope, and I want Penelope to like face consequences for the things that she did in the first season. But she was my favorite character up until that point, and I can't let go of her. So I want more of her. I don't really care if she gets with Colin, because who is Colin? Like, we don't know anything about him.
The toast go round, or whatever that fucking song that they were singing about the toast and whatever. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Like, the only things we know about any of the brothers that aren't Anthony is that Buford Beauregard, can't remember his name, Benedict. Whatever. He likes art. That's fun. But we don't do anything with that.
He might be bi. Maybe.
We're hoping that he's bi.
Done anything with that yet?
Can you believe that they did that to us? Like, I really expected some queer stuff in here. Like, I feel like they kind of let us on in the trailer.
Oh, they did.
They did. They queer baited the fuck out of us. And I should have known better. I should never trust. I don't trust anything until the fucking happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I was astounded. Like more so because like men like male queerness is like not particularly new in Shonda Rhimes shows. So I was just very surprised that they didn't do anything with it. But I guess they thought like, no, we need this other stuff going on. And I'm like,
we need to rush into exposing Penelope as Lady Whistledown, but we're not going to talk about the fact that Buford Beauregard Benedict might be bisexual.
Yeah.
Just making sleep with the seamstress.
How is Penn hiding the allowance? What is she doing with the money? Where's she putting it?
She putting them in her cleavage, girl. You seen them, of course.
Those dresses are so like they're like cutting her boobs in half.
No, the mothers were definitely getting cut because Mama Bridgerton. There was one scene I was like, them shits is swollen, and Mama Featherington as well. But she wore it well. She was giving me very much Bernadette Peters and Brandy Cinderella tease. I was like,
yes,
yeah, she has come to perform.
Yes,
I respect that. I'm looking forward to season 2 because I just want to see how it's going to add more diversity to the show, because I felt like there was a really big lack of like Southeast Asians in the series, which felt very strange to me considering, you know, colonization. So I really would like to see more brown people in there of different shades getting to speak. I would like to see the show, and I've heard that the second book in general is better than the first one, so I'm hoping that it'll just be a better, stronger season, and that just the show learns in constructive ways, and that other series get picked up from other romance authors of the modern era that have diversity already written in the books, or at least, you know, have a better sense of consent. I think that even in just rereading the book, like reading The Duke and I didn't hate it. It was very easy to read. I think I read it within like a day, but it just reminded me of how much romance has changed and why I wasn't into it as much back when that book would have come out. Because they're like heroines today just have so much more going on for them. And while I felt like Daphne was close to being a heroine I could root for actively, besides just the protag vibes, she just felt very out of place. So I'm hoping that as the series goes further, that, you know, the writer gets better at making characters that I enjoy.
Yeah, something I said to Paige when I was maybe about 50% of the way through the book was like, I mean, it's fine. Like, it's not horrible or anything. I mean, and it's not good, it's not bad, it's fine. Like, and I personally like don't understand what it was about this particular book that like so captured the imagination of the showrunners to like adapt it, because I'm like, but what? Like, you could have read something in the last 5 years and you would, not to be that person, but you could essentially get the same story from something written in the last 5 years, and you probably wouldn't have this unnecessary sexual assault scene. Like, that's like one of the final things I want to say about this show is that like it would have been so easy to just rewrite that out. Like, if you really want to stick to your guns and like, because I actually think that she has a point in terms of saying like, you lied to me, you told me that you couldn't have children, knowing that I would believe you, knowing that I don't have the experience to recognize and like I don't have that sexual knowledge to know that you were lying. And if they, because like I think that's true, like I think that was a shitty thing to do, especially because I think she's ultimately right of like, you're letting some dead man control your life, like he's never coming back.
There's an argument that if she had clearly understood that he did not want to have children,
that she might not have married him
and would not have been having sex with him. And that's what I mean, that it's that grayness that is more interesting when they actually make the conflict feel genuine. Sorry to cut you off, but go ahead. Yeah,
no worries. But like if you want to keep that and explore that, which is honestly, this is a very like normal kind of thing that is explored in historical romances. Like, the male lead has trauma and the female lead is like, but have you considered that your logic is bad for this?
Literally Jane Eyre, like.
And like literally all you have to do, is just not have her sexually assault him. It's just have her realize the next time that they have sex, when he pulls out, that like he's been lying to her. She doesn't need to assault him. And then you can still keep the righteous indignation that the show keeps. And you can have that conversation of like, you lied to me. This was a betrayal. Instead of just completely being like, oh, when men like when women sexually assault men, it's not the same thing. It's okay. Cause like that's not good. And I mean, I think one of the reasons that like we didn't pick up on it initially, and that maybe so many people didn't pick up on it in the scene until it was over, was that like the show so clearly frames it as this moment of like power, which of course is terrible because sexual assault is not about lust, it's about power. And like, but then they immediately follow it by having her go on this rant about how how he wronged her. And so then the show does not back down. It sticks very firmly on her side that she did nothing wrong. Like,
he also doesn't really react as if he has been assaulted. He reacts as if she has betrayed him because she could possibly be pregnant, not that she hurt him like emotionally, which is a whole nother thing that they completely missed out on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so key, is that his feelings are not present the way they should be. And I think, you know, and you're so right, Sarah, because like in the book, the assault happens after she finds out that he can have children, and is completely framed in a different way. And I just feel like they both chose the more triggering option, but then also removed all of Simon's right to be mad. And I think that this video I was watching was talking about how, like, you know, when romance novels aren't allowed to be dark or controversial because everyone wants a happy ending. And it's like, I don't think that's entirely untrue for some people, but I think that what Julia Quinn's point with that scene was to show the power imbalances between Simon and Daphne. From what I have found, is like she wanted to show that like Simon had all of this power over Daphne and had been using it against her, and this was her way of getting some of that power back in a way that she didn't fully understand, because she's also sexually ignorant in the books. And I think Julia Quinn is raising a bunch of questions with this choice that are interesting, but are rooted in a lot of messy men can't be raped sexual politics fundamentally. It's like, why do you need to explore this power imbalance through sexual assault when sexual assault is about power? So inherently you're not really aiding anything. Like, I think just the very fact that he is tormenting her is enough to just be like, well, girl, you should leave. Like, why is the answer like, why I get pregnant by him? Like, because I'm trapped. It's like, girl, go live your life. You a duchess now. I'm gonna live in another mansion. That's me. But anyway, Paige, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, that's it.
Well, thank you both so much for being on this call with me. I can't think of two people I want to talk about this more. You two are two of my best friends. I love your guys' work and your hair. Both of their hair looks so good today. And I guess we'll all get back for season 2. Yeah. Because there's gonna be a lot to talk about, I'm sure. Also, have you guys seen Soul?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have now.
We'll talk about that after the call. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds
Bye.
good. Bye.